Welcome back to Analytical Strategy. Today we are talking about the differences between the Australian and the American versions of Survivor. We will be looking at production differences of each version, and if applicable, how these differences can change the strategy of the game. The game itself has the same premise overall. You vote people off, you put people on the jury once you hit a certain stage of the game, you try to get to the end and hopefully you get the most votes from the jury to obtain the title of sole survivor. Now whilst this is the case, even the subtle variations of the production of the show between the two countries can result in changing the strategy the Castaways should put in place to be that person that gets to the end to win the game. We will delve into each of these differences and how this in turn alters how one may play the game of Survivor. So firstly, we're going to talk about the differences between the length of Australian Survivor in comparison to US Survivor and the amount of participants within each series. I think it is very important to group both of these aspects of the show together. American Survivor most commonly has been between 18 to 20 castaways, running over the course of 39 days, whilst Australian Survivor has 24 castaways, running between 50 to 55 days. Now, just to put that into perspective, within Australian Survivor, the first jury member can occur between days 33 to 37. Now, when you compare that to US Survivor, this is basically where the final decisions of the game may be made of who is going into the finals. This changes the way contestants need to play the game dramatically. Within Australian Survivor, you need to play far slower to accommodate for the extra days and people in the game. We often witness people playing too hard too early in Survivor, which results in them being an early boot or struggling to shake the perception of them being a big named player. Now this is completely amplified with more days in the game, so laying low, blending in, and really relying on these social interactions becomes more crucial than ever. Due to this, it often results in core alliances staying stronger for a longer duration of the game. As if you flip-flop, again it is hard to break that persona and can get you voted out of the game. Again, merge doesn't happen until the days in the mid-30s in Australian Survivor, so trying to avoid standing out until this stage of the game may just be the difference in staying or going. As there are many Australian superfans that have really only recently gotten the opportunity to be cast on Survivor, you can really see their passion and superfanness for the game come out. But sometimes this is in the way of playing too hard too early and therefore burning out, especially when it first returned to air. But over time, the contestants have learned that laying low can greatly assist in making it deep in the game. Now in American Survivor, due to the first tribe swap generally happening after the first couple of episodes in the modern seasons, in combination with less days in the game, it results in more twisting of alliances and relationships in the early stages of the game in comparison to Australian Survivor. Whilst this is the case, a physical presence again may be more impactful on Australian Survivor in comparison to US Survivor, and this is due to how demanding the challenges are overall in comparison. Almost every challenge seems to be extremely physical and demanding in Australian Survivor, not to mention the longer duration can also be more tolling on your body and your mind. However, it seems as though this is made up for by the supply the Australian survivors get in comparison to America. In US Survivor, you can get a small bag of rice, and you really need to ration it, and you can physically see the changes on the contestants from when they started the game to when they finished it. Even years after playing the game, you can see a real physical toll, and even scarring from bites and things of that nature. In Australian Survivor, it looks as though the rations of rice are far bigger, along with getting an outback toilet and multiple sets of clothes. Due to having to spend 2 to 3 more weeks on the island, the compensation of increased food and reward, so to speak, seems like a fair trade-off, in addition to competing in more tolling challenges on your body. These challenges again can change up the strategy of the game for the castaways, as there is more of a reliance on these big physical powerhouses, particularly in the pre-merge stage. This has resulted in young, fit and athletic alliances being able to make it deeper into the game than usual. Now whilst there are differences in the game in terms of number of days played, number of people and demand in challenges, there is also a range of additional changes from a production standpoint. I think the Australian budget is much less than the US version, so given that, I think this series has adapted to this budget extremely well. So when we discuss the hosts of each of these series, I think both Jeff and JLP really do a stand-up job in hosting the show. Jeff obviously has had a lot of experience, over 20 years of the show, and he really has perfected the art of hosting Survivor and being able to interact with contestants on the fly. Jonathan is really also doing a phenomenal job in hosting Australian Survivor. You could tell in season 1 he was still learning the ropes a little bit. His questions to the contestants at tribal councils were overly invasive, but each season his confidence is rising and he is adapting and becoming a fantastic host of the show overall. The twists in both versions of the show are trying to be unique and to stay modern to change up the game each and every season. They have a lot of consistent, common twists such as hidden immunity idols, tribe swaps and advantages. However, if you think US Survivor goes overboard on twists, Australian Survivor really takes it to another level. I can't remember the amount of times at Tribal they were ready to vote someone out and JLP says tonight, it's going to be a little bit different, and contestants are voted off to the other tribe or they're sent to exile out of nowhere. I think this is likely due to contractual arrangements where the channel gets a certain amount of episodes for the season, and to fulfill those episodes more tribals are required than necessary. One of my least favourite twists was when something like 6 out of 9 contestants were voted out across 2 tribals and sent to Exile Beach, and then they had to compete in challenges to get back in the game, so it took 3 episodes for one person to be eliminated. However, in saying this, Australian Survivor has also made some really good twists overall, with adding the advantage to an item in the auction secretly, in addition to a couple of really fun auction items such as the winner gets a plate of every single dish everyone else gets, and that was a really fun moment. But overall, I think in both series the twists can get a little bit too much, and result in the game being more about these advantages and twists rather than the social and strategic moves to get to the end. The more twists there are in the game, the more luck there is involved in the game, and more likely players can get screwed outside of their control. Moving along to another production difference, one thing Australian Survivor does that I really have wanted US Survivor to do since the dawn of time is have longer and more frequent episodes. These longer episodes result in being able to see not only great strategic play, but also a lot more character development. You could really see in the most recent US season of Survivor in Winners at War, with the edge of extinction being in play along with 20 of the best plays the game has ever seen, that there was so much content missing that made the season difficult to follow at times. This is a combination of the previous point in having too many twists with the edge of extinction being in play, combined with limited episode times. Having these longer and multiple episodes a week can fill in the gaps and improve character development overall. The editing of the two shows is honestly pretty similar, but I think Australian Survivor still has a little bit of work to do overall. There are a lot, and I mean a lot of confessionals that are chopped up from multiple conversations that the person is having with the cameraman. They even change clothes within these confessionals at times due to it being merged from one confessional from one day, from one from another. You can tell at times they are trying to cut pieces from like 4 or 5 different confessionals and put them all into one sentence, which to me minimizes the authenticity of the season and the character's strategy. I personally really want to know what they are actually thinking at that point in time, rather than it jumping around between different moments of the show. In addition, at times I can find the music in Australian Survivor to be a little bit melodramatic, and you can always tell when someone is just about to win a challenge due to this music along with a little bit of slow motion, but overall that is not too big of a deal. The cinematics on both versions are honestly extremely well done. Both Australian and US Survivor capture the nature of the location really well, and it really adds to the beauty of the location these games are being played in. American Survivor has obviously had a lot more time to refine the editing process, and in combination with their set episode length times, I think they have pretty much got it down pat and with a consistent formula. As Australian Survivor is only 5 seasons in being back on the air, I think they do have a little bit of improvement to do, but they are improving every season and they're getting to the stage of where US Survivor is. Now, whilst I am a huge fan of the longer episodes in Australian Survivor, I think their themes have been pretty poor in comparison to US Survivor. The location obviously hasn't changed much recently for US Survivor being in the same location of Fiji for some time, but they still have been able to incorporate fun themes such as David vs Goliath, Ghost Island, or Heroes vs Healers vs Hustlers, and this makes it unique and for each season to be distinctive. So far, since Australian Survivor has been back on the air, within 5 seasons there have been 2 Champions vs Contenders seasons and 1 All-Star season. The Champions and Contenders seasons are basically 50% of famous people versus 50% who aren't. Now this drastically limits the chances of people who are applying to be put on the show to get an opportunity to play the game they have wanted to for so long, due to the Champions tribe being filled with celebrities who almost all would have been recruited. Now, no doubt there would also be some recruits on the Contenders tribe as well, so there are probably only a couple of spots up for grabs for big fans of the show who actually go through the application process, which is pretty rough for them overall. Now, in saying this, there have been some fantastic characters and players within Australian Survivor, and given the themes that they have implemented so far, I think the casts have been pretty fantastic. The All-Stars cast in particular, they were really able to bring back all of the big name players with only a couple of omissions. But I personally would like to see some more variation in the themes of the show to allow for more diversity in the people playing the game, and really to allow for your average everyday person to get their moment to shine. It almost seems like the production team feels like they need celebrities on the show in order to get viewers, and I don't think this is the case at all. I feel like both series should have more diversity in terms of cultural upbringings, races and ethnicities, but I feel in terms of themes, US Survivor has had a lot of great variations which Australia could use and implement in their own series. One other key difference between the two shows is US Survivor is basically a final 3 every season now, whilst Australian Survivor has been a final 2 since it came back on air. In addition, there is no final 4 fire-making challenge in Australian Survivor, and you need to win that final immunity to guarantee yourself making it to the end and choosing who you want to sit there next to you. I think there are pros and cons for both Final 2 and Final 3s, so I don't have a huge opinion on this either way, but if I had to choose, I think I would prefer a Final 3. It gives more contestants the opportunity to present themselves to the jury, and less likely for a big named player to be voted out right before pitching their case to the jury. I think the best case scenario is a blend of both, with there being a Final 3 like US Survivor, but no fire-making challenge at the Final 4 like Australian Survivor, unless there is a tie. With there being a Final 2 in Australian Survivor, this will also change the strategy of the contestants in addition to the number of days played in the game. With there being a longer game overall and less people in the finals, again these core alliances become more impactful in comparison to US Survivor, where you can have the freedom to chop and change a little bit more. I also think there may be more of these changing of alliances the longer Australian Survivor is on the air, as you could really tell the gamers from the people who weren't as familiar with the show in Season 1, but the following season was probably one of the best that there has ever been internationally, prior to the introduction of Champions vs Contenders. So I think there is a lot of potential to see a lot of great players in seasons to come, as the population becomes more familiar with the game. Now overall, both series of the show are obviously amazing, with the same primary concepts throughout. Regardless of whether it is Australian, American, or one of the other international versions of the show I'm yet to expose myself to, Survivor is still the best game of all time, which means all versions of it are great. Even the so-called bad seasons of the show, I still get far more enjoyment out of than most things that are on TV. I consider the differences between the two versions to be very minimal, and it is really hard to split the two. They really are as good as each other, so if you haven't seen Australian Survivor yet, I would highly recommend doing so, with more content specific to Australian Survivor to come in future videos on this channel. One thing I am really excited to make is my Dreamcast of Australian Survivor versus US Survivor, so keep your eyes peeled for that. What do you guys think of the two versions of the show? Have you seen Australian Survivor, and if so, what do you think of it? Please let me know down in the comments. As always, thanks to everyone for the support and engaging within my channel. Please hit that subscribe button for new videos coming every single week. This is Analytical Strategy, and we are signing out once again. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.